In this video we're going to look at Carcanos that were converted to the 8mm Mauser. I have our book, so it's going to be story time on Carcano rifles. I really didn't know much about these, and in all my years of collecting I seen one example back around say 1978 that was in a grouping of extremely rare guns. They had one of these rifles like this, and I remember it because of the, it's a Carcano with the two lugs here, and I believe when I was in the shop the owner let me look at it. I held the gun and opened the action, but you've seen photos of them and you heard about them, but never really seen them in quantity anywhere. And you were always told that, the conversion was unsafe. That was in all the publications, magazines, and that. And like I said, other than until recent times, I only actually held one once in all those years. Now, what's the story on these? And there's a little bit of confusion. Reading in the book, he explains it fairly well, but it is a confusing story. Model 38 weapons in the 7.92 by 57 caliber are questionably most controversial weapons. Now, the Germans produced these, I believe, in they did tests in mid-1944 and started producing these in Austria at Heinrich Krieghoff of Klagenfurt, Austria, was making conversions. And it does mention in here, now, he only talks about these two, a TS and a cavalry carbine, but I have seen long rifles modified, and there is a brief mention that the Germans started to modify the Model 41 rifle. Okay? And I have seen photographs of a long rifle with this modification into it. So, again, nothing really definite, and he does have a photo of like these two guns here, and they do have Arabic markings on them. So I guess the Germans started a conversion. And how the conversion is done is pretty simple. They take, and he says they were all made from 6.5 or 7.35 rifles. What they did, it would bore out the barrel. They had to modify the receiver and the bolt head and face, and there was something about the bolt stop that was changed, which a lot of people question, is this safe because of what you're removing in that. So that's where these guns came from. Now, the Germans did some of the work until late, it says here, German conversions, 1945, there were 15,000. And then the Italians started doing the conversions again. And what's critical, a German conversion will only have the one lug up here in the front for reinforcement, not in the wrist area. That was something the Italians did later on, supposedly what he's saying in his book. And also, when the Germans did the conversion 44-45, they were in a hurry. They didn't screw around with clips or clip fed. That was something they were going to do later. And what the Germans did, how you can tell a German modified gun, if it does or does not have the stampings, is they mounted, here's my finger is here, a wooden block. They took the magazine thing out, mounted a wooden block in there, and it was a single shot gun. Okay, because they were like, the war was going to end in 3 months, so they were desperate as hell. They didn't screw around with a clip. So, then I guess the Italians continued doing this, but it states in here from 1950 to 1954. They didn't do it like immediately after the war. This was done at a later point. And curiously enough, so like I said, they modified the guns, and we'll take a closer look and go over that. These here, these cavalry carbines with the folding bayonet. Supposedly, Krieghoff in 1945 did 15,000 of them, and then the Italians, Brescia, which this thing has no markings on it, so probably is, from 1950 to 1954 only made 10,000 of these cavalry carbines. So probably this one's pretty scarce. Now I remember when I bought it from a dealer, but I'll tell you the story later. So this is a pretty scarce gun. There's only 10,000 of them made. Okay, so very interesting. And also another thing when it comes into the clip, here's a photograph. They modified the clip latch, which is different. And it has to do with the fact they took, then when we get into the clips, that's another story. But they decided to shorten standard Carcano clips and only hold 5 rounds. So that I think they had to shorten them like a quarter-inch or something. The measurements are in here. They had to shorten them, and they only put 8 rounds in them. Some people say they were purposely manufactured clips post-war sometime. They're extremely rare. He has a strange photograph of one here in the back of the book. But clips, that's a whole other story. But the Italian ones were designed to use a 5-shot in-block clip magazine in here. So, but it had a different latch. So that is this one here, only 10,000 of them. Now, they did go with the 38 TS, and again, they took existing guns or parts or leftovers and they modified them from either 6.5 or 7.35, and they came up with the TS carbines. Now, Krieghoff made them again 1945, but the TS's, they don't give a number, but they said estimated 25,000 were made by the Italians from 1950 to 1954. They don't have an estimate number for the German ones. And they were produced for the Arab Emirates. So they did manufacture them with somebody willing to buy these. I don't know if it was an idea they came up with and convinced the Arab Emirates to buy these, because most of Egypt and that country has adopted 8mm weapons. So it's kind of unclear. Alright, so now we got production numbers and all the other stuff. We got some ideas of what they did. Let's take a closer look at the rifles. Okay, upon a closer examination, it looks like a standard Carcano M38 TS rifle. Now the glaring difference you're going to notice are these little reinforcement bolts. And what they do is they go in through the stock, and as you can see where the screws are for the action, they're behind them, and that helps with the recoil and keeps the stock from breaking from the recoil and shock. Now the other thing you're going to notice immediately on some of these is they had to machine out this section here, okay, this nub or round thing, because the 8mm cartridge is longer, so they had to modify the receivers to accept the longer cartridge. And what they did is on the standard Carcano, you see they cut out this, and they also machined down inside corresponding into the stock in that. Let me see if I can get some light. Okay, that's a little bit better. Well, when they machine that out so the longer cartridge can be fed down in there, they also had to machine a section away of the receiver. Okay, this web area here on the bottom of the receiver is thinner when you look at it. They also had to remachine and widen the bolt face so it would accept the larger base of the 8mm cartridge. I'll get that out. They machined out the face of the bolt and made it bigger. Now I did kind of measure this. It seems that the body diameter and the lug thickness is about 10,000ths difference. Not huge, but I believe it may be that these are uniquely made to this modification. Now they also did something down there into the bolt stop where I'll demonstrate that in a minute. I want to get a better look at down in there. See, that's what they're worried about. If you compare this right next to a Carcano, this section in here had to be machined out in the receiver also to make room for the cartridge to get in. Now this one is marked S. There's the manufacturer's markings. Some markings there, stamped 7.92, and one little mark there. Okay, like I was saying, the bolt stop was modified so when you, excuse me a second, it was modified so you don't have to pull the trigger. I just stuck this in the back of the receiver. You see the stop there. Usually on a Carcano you'd have to depress the trigger. This one was modified where that, we can get it, that does not have to happen. Do it this way. See, it goes right up in there. So that's another unusual modification or something that's different than the standard Carcano. And like I said down in there, the shape of that clip latch. I think we'll talk about clips and that in a separate video. We'll just take an overview of the guns. Other than that, it's a standard, Carcano rifle. M39 TS, stock in that. The S supposedly is for Spitzers. Some of them have S on them. Some of them, like the this one down here, does not. And this particular gun has an S on the bolt and the receiver. So you will find variations in the markings on these weapons from one to the other. And we'll take a look at it from the underside. And for some reason, only one sling mount on the lower end. They don't have the side mounts, which is kind of curious why they dropped that off. So now we'll look at the cavalry carbine. Okay, cav carbine, again, the reinforcement bolts for the recoil lugs. And again, we see the top of the receivers machined out. Now this one has no S's on it whatsoever. And this one just has a serial number. And it's kind of devoid of all markings. There are some markings on the underside of the receiver. This one I was able to get apart. And 7.92. You will find these without a caliber designation stamped on the rear sight. And our standard folding bayonet, and again Carcano rifle. And yes, this does have a little trap door in the butt plate. I don't know if there's a cleaning rod, but that's where your cleaning rod would be kept. The cleaning rod is missing on the TS. Now this one has the button style release on the bayonet. And I noticed something these sights are supposed to be set at 100 meters. Okay, that's one thing about these guns. Now, the rear sight is fine, but I noticed when I took this out to the range, this front sight's like an older sight, and I realized it was looser than hell. Okay, it's moving. And as you can see, it's not that high, where that sight kind of is pronounced a little bit higher. So I think somebody put an older style sight on there and didn't set it for 100 meters, even though this may have been, made from 50 to 54. I'm not sure. Okay, and again, like I said, the information on these guns very, very scarce. But same modification with the TS is done with this here. And these were made from existing guns. In other words, these are modified from a different caliber. At least that's what the book says. And the same thing. Our, receiver's been modified to accept a longer cartridge, thinned out in the web here. Bolt face and all that modified. So, you can't take this out and try to use it in a 6.5 or 7.35. I believe there is a difference in the guns. So there we have a look at it. And like I said, this one has no markings hardly at all, or not whatsoever on there, other than the caliber designation and the serial number. Where, this has a maker, some stampings and S's all over everything. Okay. Alright, and this one is a standard M38 Cav. Side sling mounts, folding bayonet. So it is very interesting, and like I said, they estimated only 10,000 of these were made, so this is a unusual and fairly rare gun. Let me see if there's something about this bayonet that's right. Something I heard and when I seen one of these come up for sale. Alright, I remember now. This rampant line or symbol here on the bayonet is said to meant that it's from so-and-so or whatever. It's actually the company symbol from the company that made the bayonet blades. That's all that is. Some people went out there and tried to say that it was a marking because of a different reason. And my camera went out of focus. But that is not what it is. It is the company logo. So, speaking of bayonets, I'm going to set the camera up. I'm going to demonstrate the folder and see if a standard Carcano bayonet fits on our TS. Alright, so this is standard, Cav carbine. Press the button, slide it down, rotate it around, and snap her back, and there it is. So basically, Model 35 Cav modified for the 8mm. And like I said, when they went and thinned that out in there, that makes a lot of people nervous seeing that little web in there where the bolt locks in. I don't know if you can see it or not. Whether or not this is safe to fire. Okay, that's another question. People said, are these things safe to fire? Some people say they're not. Other people are out there videos shooting these guns. What's I guess standard 8mm ammo. They really don't elaborate on it. But to play it safe, what I did is I went and put a very mild cast bullet load with like 180 grain cast bullet and fairly moderate, mild charge of powder that will, shoot, but it's not going to generate the pressure or anything dangerous. So that's how I went and shot it. So that's this one here. Now, other question, the question of the bayonet on the TS. Let's try to answer that one. Alright, we have our standard Carcano knife bayonet, which these are somewhat available on, I think DK Firearms still has them, like 180 bucks. So, this one here I noticed when it goes on, starts to go in there. I think the lug is bent, but I can get it to go on and lock on. Now in the book he said people have complained that the barrel is too large in diameter, which if they made these from the standard rifle barrels, the bayonet should go on, which it does, but I noticed this thing's bent or pitched. But the standard knife bayonet does fit on this particular rifle. Okay, and it comes off. So there you have it. Look at this here. Like I said, there's a few other markings on this. Let you guys look at them. Now, like I said, clips. I'm not going to get into it because that's a long discussion. I'll make a separate video about it. This is where your single shot block thing, whether you believe it's real or not, comes in handy. Okay, it's well worth the money. You put your single shot block, like that guy's selling, in here, and you can safely load it without damaging your extractor until we come up to a solution for clips, magazines, whatever you want to call them, to get this to be a repeater. I have not found a lot of information about that or how to modify the clips to get in here, but it's something I'll be working on when I have the time. But as of now, I'll have another video where I go to the range and I test fire these guns using the single shot block adapter and with a very mild cast bullet load. Okay, so that's about all. Like I said, the information's, there's not a lot of information about these, and they are post-war, so you're not going to find it. And like I said, I have seen long rifles, probably Type 41s that were modified, so it comes under odd and rare variations. And I remember when they brought a bunch of these in, they dumped a whole pile of these on the market all at once at one time, and they did come from United Arab Emirates. When they did, they must have went there and bought whatever they had. Supposedly they used them as drill rifles. This is the one I picked up most recently, and when I got this one, other than the screw being broken here and I can't get it apart to look at it, it was complete and had a firing pin. Now when I bought the other one, and the guy said that I bought it from, when it came in, he was a dealer, he found only one of these in the shipment of guns he got, and he kept it for years. And he was talking about retiring and his age and that, and he just wanted to get rid of some things, so he sold this. But when I got this, the firing pin was broken off, so this would not function until I replaced the firing pin. Okay, which may have been done by the Arabs or whatever, because nobody wanted anyone to shoot these. Okay, so I don't know. That's about all I know. I hope you enjoyed the video, so stay tuned, subscribe, and if you can send some support, it would be greatly appreciated.